Kevin Winston Jr. Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State, Ryan.
Yes.
He is interesting when we talk in the scope of this conversation. I have not gotten to a lot of safeties. I chose to watch him because you and I had a little bit of a text exchange talking about how you had heard some folks say that he's a really good player. I had seen him ranked highly on a number of different services. PFF was one of them. I like to use, I think it's Mock Draftable is the one that I like to use. They've got like a consensus big board it's Mock Draft Database.
Mock Draftable is where you compare the measurables and all that type of stuff. Yeah.
Right. Mock Draft Database is a really nice tool where there's like a consensus one with whatever top media outlets have out there. And he's ranked pretty highly. I don't know if the ranking necessarily fits. There will not be two safeties in the first round. A little bit of a spoiler alert. 6'2", 204. What background do you got on this kid?
So, Joe, some people don't have him high. I was told that someone thinks that he's better than Malachi Starks, which obviously we'll talk about. I don't want to mention their name. I don't want to mention their name.
Somebody I know?
Nah, it's someone on Twitter. It's not like anybody that prominent. But 4-star player coming out. He went to DeMatha Catholic, Joe, in Maryland, which is one of the best Catholic schools on the East Coast. They consistently put out a lot of great football players, to say the least. Penn State's had this Penn State has, in probably the last 10 or 15 years, I don't know if it even ranges back further than that, they've always done really well in the Maryland, D.C. Catholic schools for whatever reason. I know that, what's his name? Who's the head coach for Virginia Tech now? That used to be Brent Pry, right? Brent Pry, who was the defensive coordinator for Penn State. Thank you for saying his name after I said his name. I know what his name is, obviously. Thank you so much. He was the defensive coordinator. Just kidding, man. He was the defensive coordinator for Penn State, and they routinely, just went down to Maryland, D.C., and Virginia and just got some of the best players. Like, that's the pipeline. DMV pretty much up to Penn State. And it continued with Kevin Winston Jr. Now, he was a 4-star by On3, 247 Sports, and Rivals, but he wasn't the highest ranked 4-star of all time. He ranked highest by On3, who had him rated as the 212 overall player in his class. 4-star, number 300 overall player on the On3 industry ranking. So, not crazy, right? ESPN had him ranked as a 3-star. So he had a good offer list, but his overall recruiting rankings were not fantastic coming out of DeMatha. But obviously he has outplayed that recruiting standard at this point. He just had a Big Ten honorable mention season this past year, started all 13 games. Because I think if I remember correctly, when I was looking at his background, I think he played as a freshman, but I don't think it was anything stellar, if I remember correctly, right? I think he was just kind of a part-time player. I'm trying to pull it up, but I know he started all 13 games this past year. Yeah, he played in 12 games as a true freshman in 2022, only made 16 tackles as just kind of a role player, contributor, special teamer. This past year was his breakout year, all Big Ten level season. So not a crazy recruiting background, 4-star by 3 different services. DeMatha Catholic, continuing that pipeline, though, of those prominent Catholic schools in the DMV to go up to Penn State and make a lot of plays.
So he's one of these players who didn't play the role last year that he's best suited to succeed in the NFL, which is weird because Manny Diaz is a great defensive coordinator. You would kind of think that he would be aggressive in trying to put him in positions to succeed. Now, we did get glimpses of it and exposure to what that role will be. And I'm talking about the fact that he's got great straight line speed, but doesn't really have the hips or the flexibility to be a free safety. He's got the frame and the size to be, I think, really good in the box. I think he can be a really nice, strong safety because he's a willing tackler. He can be impactful in the run game, and he comes down hard. I think what I really loved about him, and I think what's going to make him moderately highly draftable somewhere on day 2, Ryan, is the fact that he's what you want to cover tight ends. This is a guy who doesn't need to be super fluid to open up and run with slot receivers or any deep threats over the top, whatever it might be. He is flexible enough and fluid enough to keep up with tight ends. And I think that where the length, the play strength is going to be useful for him in the NFL. There's not a very specific role for him, but I think that there is a role that can be mapped out for this type of player that could get him picked moderately highly.
I think he's going to be kind of volatile as a prospect. I mean, because you're right. He could get picked highly, Or who's the Boise State safety that came out last year?
JL Skinner.
JL Skinner.
Oh, I don't. You think they're the same? I don't think they're similar at all.
Similar-ish. You don't think so? I mean, like their strengths
are
a little
more flexible.
Yeah, sure. But my point is that these big-bodied safeties that we love to hype up in summer scouting, because I have a. Am I allowed to say what my grade is on him right now?
Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah.
So
I already said I have his day 2 guy.
I have a late second round grade on him because the athletic traits are really nice, right? Like he's 6'2", maybe some change. He's 200 plus pounds. He's strong. He's dense. He has good length. Like all that stuff is cool, right? And he's explosive. Like straight line, I agree. I think that he can get from point A to point B in a straight line really, really well. But the problem is that we talk about these tight end erasers. And I think that he can be that, but we do also need to remember that like that's a very simplistic role on the next level, man. And in the game, how it is evolved, right? And how the game is evolved now is you're trying to spread out so much that guys are going to get isolated at times, man, in situations that you don't want to be in. And there's going to be times where he's going to be forced to play from depth and to be able to try to make plays with his eyes and recognition and range. And I don't see sideline to sideline range. I see he could play some too high stuff where he's on the hash, like hash to sideline. He could do that type of stuff, laterally moving. Not a guy that's going to completely open up his hips though and work from middle of the field to like I just don't see that type of range here. He can be in a system a good player on the next level, in my opinion, but that system is dependent. I don't think this is a scheme versatile player. I think that he's very strong, very good in a straight line, and he doesn't miss tackles at all, which is really nice. Like he does not miss tackles. He has pretty good instincts in short zone and as a robber role type of situation. I just don't see that. I don't think he's ever going to be a player that works from depth. That's going to give you like this amazing upside as a coverage player. I do think he's a bit scheme specific with his role in that regard.
Right. He kind of paints for me this picture of a prospect who I think is going to test well. So he'll be one of these guys that's going to be a post-combine darling that's going to get brought up by a lot of people. And I think that I could see myself if he has a good season this year and he tests well, like me being one of those people that props him up. But to the volatility that you're talking about, there's a chance that he either goes pick 49 in the second round or he doesn't go until the end of the fourth. Like there's a really good shot that there's that much of a range.
Yeah.
Because we know that it's something that I think gets missed a lot when we just evaluate and talk rankings. And when people do these ranking shows is the NFL, when they're on draft day and they see a guy that they like is sliding, they're going to try and milk that as long as possible. You know, they're going to try and see how much value they can get out of a situation like that. So he could end up sliding to what you're talking about specifically of he is very role scheme specific.
Right.
I think he could really flourish in the right role like we're talking about here, but it's just very niche. He's a very niche player. It's a very, very interesting, confusing conversation that I don't know if everyone's going to really truly understand.
No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, let's put it in the layman's terms, right? Let's put it in the most obvious and easy to understand language. He is a pretty high ceiling player, potentially, that has a pretty low floor, in my opinion. Because, again, in this evolving game, this type of safety is cool and it can work. Ask Kyle Hamilton, right? Like it can work, but it's just you need to land in a perfect situation. You need to be with a defensive coordinator that understands how to use you and a guy that can be very understanding of what his role is. Because I don't think, Joe, that so like Malachi Starks, comparing him to Malachi for a second, right? Malachi, no matter what role I throw him into, no matter what system, what situation, I think he's going to be a good player, at least a good player, maybe a great player, maybe an elite player. This kid could either be very good in a certain situation or he's going to be a below average starter in another. Like, I don't think there's a lot of in between, man. Like, I just think the volatility here is something that we need to be worried about a little bit. You need to understand that this kid is not going to be for everyone, and that's okay because it only takes one at the end of the day, but that one is going to be very important for a guy like Kevin Winston.
At Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft, at NFL Prospects Pod on Twitter. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, drop a comment on what you think about these two prospects, and then leave us a 5-star review on audio wherever you're tuning in. We'll talk to you later, folks. Enjoy the rest of your week. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.